Alright guys, our first tip for the GoPro Hero 7 is the front lens is removable. To do that, we're going to pull out on the lens and then twist clockwise and the lens will remove. This is a great feature in case you scratch or break your front lens. You could easily take this off and replace it. They also make different lens filters that you can put on the GoPro. And another reason to remove this lens is if you bought the dive housing for the GoPro, you're going to need to remove this front lens to put it inside the housing. Tip number 2 for the GoPro is make sure it's out of the skeleton housing for this. We're going to pop off this side door right here, and I'm going to tell you why that's useful in just a second. We're going to open it right up, and then you just pull it out, and then there you go, it's off. Why is this useful? When we put it back in its skeleton case here, you're going to have lots of access to your power port and your HDMI port. So if you're trying to live stream and you need to have this baby hooked up to a power source, or if you need it hooked up to a monitor, you've got your big open box right here, and no problem getting your power cord and HDMI cord in there with the case on there. Tip number 3 will be to carry a battery bank with you anytime you got your GoPro out instead of carrying multiple GoPro batteries. This is nice, especially when you have your side door open already. You can go ahead, plug your battery bank in. If you're doing a long time lapse overnight, your GoPro's not going to die. Also, if you're just having a long day of filming, your battery pack will ensure that you'll be able to get all the shots you need. Because like I said, the GoPro battery does not last all day, especially under intensive filming. So keep that battery bank in your backpack, keep that side door popped off, and you'll never run out of juice. Keep in mind though, with the side door off, your GoPro is no longer waterproof. Tip number 4 is going to be to put your settings menu on your front facing display. To do that, I'm going to hold the mode button and then press the record button. There it goes. I've got all my settings right here. You're going to hit mode to scroll through them. At the very bottom of this menu here is going to be a done option, and just go ahead and use your shutter button to escape out of that mode. This is great if you're underwater and you cannot use your touch display. Also, if it's really cold, you don't want to take your gloves off if you're snowboarding or something, or anytime you just don't have access to your touch display, the front mode settings is a great little tool to have. Tip number 5, this kind of worked out perfect. If your GoPro freezes up like mine just did, it's the camera is not recording anything right now. It's just kind of stuck on an image, and you don't want to take your battery out because maybe you're underwater or you don't want to just take your gloves off. Whatever it is, this is much easier than taking your battery out. You could hold that mode button for 10 seconds, and that should give your GoPro a hard reset. There it goes. And we should be all fixed up now. There we go. My camera is now picking up images unlike before. So that is how you reset your camera without taking the battery out. Tip number 6 is to lock your exposure. This will help cut down on some like light flickering or anything like that, but you can find an exposure point that you like. You can hold down on the screen here. You'll get a little crosshair box that comes up, and you could hit the check mark button to lock in that exposure. So if you're happy with the exposure you have and you want to hold that exposure, this is a great little tip to do so. Tip number 7 for the GoPro, if you don't know already, this is a good one. To go ahead and turn off your lights and beeps. To do that, we're going to swipe down on the menu. We're going to hit Preferences. We're going to hit General. You're going to see the beep volume there. You can put it on high, medium, low. If you're doing an extreme sport and have the GoPro on your head, I kind of like to have the beep so I know when my camera turns on and off. And you could also go to the LEDs. Select that right there, all on, all off, or just the front only. Again, it kind of depends what you're doing for the day, if you're trying to be stealth or if you need these to help you know what's going on with your camera. Either way, it's a great tool. If you don't know, now you know. That's how you turn off your beeps and your LED lights. Tip number 8 is much like your cell phone these days, the GoPro can be held in a landscape mode or a portrait mode, and it will automatically flip the camera around depending on how you hold it. This can be good, but it could also be bad because if you start recording by accident while it's one way and then you flip it to the other way, your footage could be distorted in a direction you don't want it to be. So to keep it locked on the way you want it to be, you swipe down, you go to your preferences, touch display, to landscape lock. You have the option to keep it off so it orientates naturally, or you could lock it in the up or down position. This is a great tool to have. You don't want to find out your footage is being filmed in the wrong direction until it's too late. So go ahead and lock it in the way you want it, or just be super aware that this guy can flip around on you. Tip number 9 is going to be for someone who likes to do some editing and post-production here. And if you like to do color grading, this one's particularly useful. You're going to go ahead and click on your settings here, click on your Pro Tune, turn that on. When you turn on Pro Tune, you're going to get some additional settings here. I recommend you go to color. The GoPro color correction is a good color correction profile, but if you do like to do that post-production, I recommend going in the flat. You'll have a more raw color gamut, and you'll be able to do better color grading. Tip number 10 is going to be how to conserve your battery life. This is pretty important. These are some features you can turn off, especially if you're not using them. We're going to swipe down on our menu. You can turn off voice command. You can turn off quick capture. We can go to preferences. We can go to connections. We can turn off our wireless connection if you're not using that. We could also go to, if we're going to go back here, we can go to regional GPS. You can turn your GPS off. A lot of people don't use that in general, so it's another feature that's great to turn off. But yeah, you can do all these things to conserve your battery life. You could also turn off the beeps. You can turn off the LEDs. All these things combined together will help preserve your battery life. Here's a bonus tip for you. Probably the whole reason why you bought the GoPro is for that hyper smooth image stabilization, and you want to make sure that's on. So go ahead into your video settings, go to your resolution frames per second, and you'll see hyper smooth stabilization is on with these resolutions and frame rate. Depending on what you choose, sometimes it's not supported. So just make sure that whatever resolution and frames per second you choose and field of view, that your hyper smooth stabilization is supported. You could also toggle between 4:3 aspect, which is something like Instagram, and 16:9, which is probably going to be like your TV these days. So play with these settings and just make sure the ones you choose support that hyper smooth stabilization. If you don't need this stabilization, of course, don't pay attention, but most of the time people bought this camera for that stabilization, or at least I did. So make sure it's on and enjoy your new GoPro Hero 7.